Competition Demystified by Bruce Greenwald and Judd Kahn. Introduction. Imagine for a moment, the year is 1980. You're standing on a city street, and two cars pull up to a stoplight. One is a brand new Cadillac, the symbol of American luxury. Its name is so synonymous with quality that people say something is the Cadillac of its kind. The other car is a Mercedes-Benz, a masterpiece of German engineering, a global icon of prestige and performance. For decades, these two brands have done everything right. They've built magnificent products, cultivated an aura of excellence, and people are willing to pay a premium for them. Now, if I were to ask you which of these companies you'd rather own, based on their incredible brands and products, you'd probably say it's a tough choice. Both seem destined for spectacular, long-term success. But what if I told you that, over the long run, the financial performance of these car companies wouldn't look much different from a company that sells something as simple and unglamorous as copper, or steel, or bulk textiles? It seems impossible, doesn't it? How could companies with such powerful, differentiated brands end up in the same financial boat as a commodity business? This is the great puzzle of business, a mystery that has confused leaders and investors for generations. And the answer to that puzzle is the key that unlocks the entire world of business strategy. Today, we're going to explore a book that hands us that key. It's called Competition Demystified by Bruce Greenwald and Judd Kahn. This isn't just another business book filled with complicated theories and buzzwords. In fact, it's the opposite. It's a radically simplified guide that cuts through all the noise. The author has been a legendary professor at Columbia Business School for years, and his ideas have quietly shaped the thinking of some of the most successful investors and executives in the world. He's like a wise master who reveals that the most complex-looking problems often have the simplest solutions. In this journey together, I promise you one thing: by the end of our conversation, you will see the world of business with a clarity that very few people ever attain. You'll understand the single, powerful force that determines whether a company thrives and endures, or struggles and fades away. You'll learn why a small-town retailer became the biggest company on earth, why a beloved computer company struggled for decades despite its brilliant products, and why sometimes, the smartest move in a fight is to help your competitor. This isn't just about business strategy, it's about a fundamental way of understanding how the world works. So, let's begin. Let's demystify competition, together. Book summary. Most people, when they think about business strategy, think about a grand plan. A plan to create a better product, a plan to reach more customers, a plan to increase profits. They think strategy is about being smarter, or more innovative, or having a more visionary leader. And while all those things are helpful, the authors of this book would tell you they are not the heart of strategy at all. At its core, they say, strategy is not about what you do in isolation. It's about how you navigate the world of competitors. Think about it like a game of chess. It doesn't matter how brilliantly you plan your next move if you don't consider what your opponent is going to do in response. Real strategy is about understanding the landscape of competition and finding a position on that landscape where you are protected from attack. And that brings us to the book's central, powerful idea. The entire landscape of business, every industry and every market, can be divided into two, and only two, kinds of places. It's a great continental divide. On one side, you have markets with no barriers to entry. And on the other, you have markets with barriers to entry. Where a company stands in relation to that divide determines everything. Let's start with the first side, the level playing field. This is where most businesses live. A market with no barriers to entry is like a public park. Anyone can come in and set up a picnic. Imagine you start a food truck selling the most delicious tacos in town. The first few weeks, you're a massive success. The lines are long, and you're making a wonderful profit. But what happens next? Other people see your success. Soon, another taco truck parks across the street. Then another. And another. To compete, you have to lower your prices. They lower theirs. You have to offer more specials. They do too. Before you know it, the wonderful profits you were making have vanished, split between all the new competitors who rushed in. This is the iron law of competition. When there are no barriers, no walls to keep competitors out, profits will always, inevitably, be driven down to the bare minimum. It doesn't matter how good your product is. The luxury car market we talked about earlier, Mercedes and Cadillac made huge profits for a time. But those profits were a beacon, attracting other companies like BMW, Lexus, and Infiniti to enter the market. They didn't necessarily offer cheaper cars, but they offered more choices. The market got fragmented. The fixed costs of designing, advertising, and maintaining dealerships got spread over fewer sales for each company, and the extraordinary profits disappeared. The authors make a crucial point here. Differentiation is not a strategy to escape this fate. Having a different or better product doesn't protect you if others can easily copy you or create their own unique version. The problem isn't a lack of differentiation, it's the absence of barriers to entry. So, if you find yourself in a business on this side of the divide, a business with no barriers to entry, what is your strategy? The book's answer is blunt and simple. Your only strategy is operational efficiency. You have to run your business better, faster, and cheaper than everyone else. You have to be the most efficient food truck in the park. You have to source your ingredients more cheaply, serve your customers faster, and manage your costs with relentless focus. It's a race without a finish line. You're not trying to outsmart your competitors, you're just trying to outrun them every single day. Now, let's cross the divide. Let's talk about the other side of the landscape, the side where real fortunes are built and sustained. Let's talk about markets with barriers to entry. A barrier to entry is like a deep moat and a high wall around a castle. It's something that allows the company inside the castle, the incumbent, to do things that potential rivals outside cannot, no matter how much money they have or how badly they want to get in. These barriers are the source of all durable competitive advantages. And here's where the book provides incredible clarity. While others have listed dozens of potential competitive advantages, Greenwald and Kahn argue that there are really only three fundamental types. First, there are supply advantages. This is when you have access to a crucial input at a lower cost than anyone else. This could be a patent on a breakthrough drug that no one else can legally produce. Or it could be owning a mine with an incredibly rich deposit of aluminum ore. These advantages are powerful, but they are often temporary. Patents expire. New technologies emerge. Supply advantages are the rarest and often the weakest of the three. Second, and far more common, are demand advantages. This is what the authors call customer captivity. And this is a critical distinction. It's not just about customers liking your brand, it's about them being, in some way, locked in. This captivity comes from three sources. The first is simple habit. We are creatures of habit. Think about the first thing you reach for in the morning. Is it a specific brand of coffee? Or think about the fierce loyalty between Coca-Cola and Pepsi drinkers. For many, it's an automatic, unthinking choice. They'd rather fight than switch. This kind of loyalty is most powerful for products that are purchased frequently and almost automatically. You don't see the same kind of habit with buying a car or a new computer, which are infrequent, considered purchases. The second source of captivity is switching costs. This is when it's a real pain, in terms of time, money, or effort, to move from one provider to another. The classic example from the book is enterprise software. Once a whole company learns to use Microsoft Windows and Office, the cost of retraining everyone on a new system is enormous, even if the new system is technically superior. A simpler example for you might be your phone. If all your friends are on iMessage, switching to an Android phone means you're out of the group chat loop. That's a switching cost. The higher the switching costs, the more captive the customer. The third source is search costs. This applies when finding a reliable alternative is difficult and risky. The book uses the example of finding a new doctor. You can't just look one up in the phone book and know if they're good. You have to ask for recommendations, do research, and even then, it's a gamble. The same is true for a business looking for a complex, customized piece of manufacturing equipment. It's easier and safer to stick with a vendor you already know and trust, even if you're not perfectly happy, because the cost of searching for a new one, and the risk of getting it wrong, is just too high. Now we come to the third, and most powerful, type of competitive advantage: economies of scale. This is perhaps the most misunderstood idea in business, and the book's explanation is brilliant. Economies of scale are not just about being big. They arise when a business has high fixed costs, and the market leader can spread those costs over a much larger volume of sales than its competitors. The classic story here, and the book's central case study, is Walmart. Think about how Walmart grew. It didn't start by opening stores in New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles. It started in small towns in Arkansas. In these small towns, the market could typically only support one large discount store. Sam Walton's strategy was to build a cluster of stores in a region, all serviced by a single, massive, and very expensive distribution center. That distribution center was a huge fixed cost. Now, imagine you're Kmart, and you want to compete with Walmart in that region. You can't just open one store. The cost of supplying that single store from your nearest distribution center, which might be hundreds of miles away, would be astronomical. To compete on price, you'd have to replicate Walmart's entire network of stores and its distribution center. But Walmart is already there. They have the customers. Thanks to a little bit of customer captivity, people are used to shopping there. They know the layout. Walmart will keep the majority of the market share. So even if you build that expensive network, you'll have fewer sales to spread your fixed costs over. Your cost per item sold will be higher than Walmart's. They can set a price where they make a nice profit, but you lose money. You can't win. That is the power of economies of scale. And this leads to one of the book's most profound and counterintuitive insights: to succeed, you have to think local. Competitive advantages are almost always grounded in local circumstances. Local can mean geography, like Walmart's regional dominance. Or it can mean a niche in product space, like Microsoft's dominance of the PC operating system, or Intel's dominance of the microprocessor market. Both Microsoft and Intel focused on dominating a very specific, well-defined product niche. They built a fortress on that small piece of land and then gradually expanded from there. This contrasts sharply with Apple. From the beginning, Apple took a more global approach. It was a computer manufacturer and a software producer. It tried to compete across the board. But it found itself in a battle against specialists who dominated their local product niches. Apple was on the wrong side of the competitive advantage divide in both CPUs, where Intel was king, and in operating systems, where Microsoft was emperor. As the book memorably puts it, Apple was like a champion swimmer who decides to compete with a large cement block attached to each ankle. No matter how brilliant its designs or how loyal its fans, it was fighting a battle it couldn't win, because it misunderstood the local nature of competitive advantage. The story of Coors beer is another powerful cautionary tale. In the 1970s, Coors was a regional phenomenon. It was only sold in 11 western states. Because it was unpasteurized and had to be kept refrigerated, there was a mystique around it. Celebrities and even presidents would go to great lengths to get their hands on a case of Coors. The company was fantastically profitable, far more so than its national competitors like Anheuser-Busch. Why? Because within its local, 11-state territory, Coors was dominant. It had economies of scale in distribution and advertising. But then, driven by a desire for growth, Coors decided to go national. And it was a disaster. As it expanded across the country, all of its advantages disappeared. Shipping refrigerated beer from its single brewery in Colorado was incredibly expensive. The mystique vanished the moment you could buy it in any corner store in New York. And in new markets, it was a small player going up against the established giants like Anheuser-Busch and Miller, who had their own local economies of scale in those regions. Coors's profitability plummeted and never recovered. It abandoned the very source of its strength in the pursuit of unfocused growth. It forgot to think local. So, the first step in strategy is to map the competitive landscape. Identify the market you're in. Test for the existence of competitive advantages by looking for two telltale signs: stable market shares over many years, and consistently high returns on capital for the dominant firms. If those signs are there, you're in a market with barriers. If not, you're on a level playing field. If you are in a market with barriers, the next question is, who has the advantage? Are you the elephant? Or are you one of the ants? If you're an ant, trying to compete against a dominant elephant like Microsoft in the operating system market, the book's advice is stark: get out. Find a different picnic to attend. Your chances of success are minuscule, and they depend entirely on the elephant making a colossal mistake. But if you are the elephant, if you are the one who enjoys the competitive advantage, your first priority is to understand the source of that advantage and protect it with eternal vigilance. This is especially true for advantages based on economies of scale. Any market share you lose to a competitor narrows your cost advantage. You have to match their moves, price cut for price cut, new feature for new feature. You must not allow them to gain a foothold in your territory from which they can grow and erode your scale advantage. But what happens when the market isn't one elephant and a bunch of ants? What happens when there are 2 or 3 elephants sharing the same protected space? This is where strategy becomes most intense and demanding. This is Coca-Cola versus Pepsi. Boeing versus Airbus. This is the world of game theory. Game theory sounds complicated, but the book simplifies it beautifully. It's just a structured way of thinking about how your competitors will react to your moves. Most of these situations, the authors argue, can be understood through 2 simple games. The first is the prisoner's dilemma. This game describes competition over price. Imagine Coke and Pepsi. If both keep their prices high, they both make wonderful profits. This is the cooperate option. But each company has a powerful temptation to cheat. Pepsi might think, if I cut my price just a little, while Coke keeps theirs high, I can steal a huge chunk of market share and make even more money. But Coke isn't stupid. They see what Pepsi did, and they cut their prices too. Now both companies are selling their soda for less, and both are making lower profits. They've ended up in the worst possible outcome for them: a price war. The history of the Cola Wars is a perfect illustration of this. For years, Pepsi was the aggressor, constantly poking at the giant Coca-Cola. It introduced larger bottles for the same price. It launched the Pepsi Challenge, a series of blind taste tests that showed more people preferred the sweeter taste of Pepsi. For a long time, Coke's strategy was to simply ignore its rival. But as Pepsi's market share grew, Coke finally had to respond. This led to a period of intense, mutually destructive competition in the late 1970s and early 80s. The book tells the fascinating story of how the 2 giants finally, tacitly, learned to cooperate. After the disastrous launch of New Coke in 1985, an attempt to copy Pepsi's sweeter taste that backfired spectacularly, Coca-Cola ended up with 2 major brands, Classic Coke and New Coke. It had accidentally created a fighter brand. It could now use New Coke to compete aggressively on price in markets where Pepsi was strong, without damaging the profitability of its main brand, Classic Coke. With this new weapon in its arsenal, Coca-Cola could inflict far more pain on Pepsi than Pepsi could on it. Suddenly, peace became a more attractive option for both sides. They toned down the aggressive advertising, focused more on profitability than on market share, and both of their profit margins soared. They had learned how to escape the prisoner's dilemma. The second game is the entry/preemption game. This is about competition over capacity, decisions like building a new factory, or opening a new store in a competitor's territory. Unlike a price cut, these are long-term, costly, and hard-to-reverse commitments. The book uses the brilliant story of Rupert Murdoch's Fox Broadcasting Company entering the television network business in 1985. At the time, the industry was a cozy club of three: ABC, CBS, and NBC. They had massive barriers to entry, economies of scale in programming and distribution, and government licenses. They were fantastically profitable because they had learned to avoid competing too hard with one another. Murdoch wanted in. A head-on assault would have been suicidal and would have triggered a devastating war that would have destroyed the profitability of the industry for everyone, including him if he managed to survive. So he played the entry game like a master. He had to convince the incumbents that it would be less painful for them to let him into the club than to fight him. How did he do it? First, he didn't try to steal their best shows or their most important local affiliate stations. He sent a signal of non-aggression. Second, he targeted a different audience. While the networks were aiming for the whole family, Fox went after a younger, edgier audience with shows like Married with Children and The Simpsons, shows the other networks wouldn't have touched. He carved out a niche that didn't directly threaten their core business. Third, he priced his advertising cleverly. He offered a discount to the network rates, but he pegged his prices to theirs. The message was clear: I won't start a price war. If you raise your prices, I'll follow. Let's all keep making money. The networks read the signals. They realized that fighting Fox would be a long, bloody, and expensive war against a determined competitor. It was cheaper to just let him in and expand the club to 4 members. Fox's entry was a masterclass in how to enter a protected market without getting crushed. This stands in stark contrast to Kodak's disastrous decision to enter the instant photography market in 1976. That market was a fortress completely dominated by a single, fanatically dedicated incumbent, Polaroid. Polaroid, led by its visionary founder Edwin Land, had created the industry. It had a wall of patents, complete customer captivity if you owned a Polaroid camera, you had to buy Polaroid film, and economies of scale. Kodak, a giant in traditional photography, saw the growing instant market and wanted a piece of it. But instead of a clever, non-confrontational entry like Fox, Kodak launched a full-frontal assault. It made no secret of its plans, spending years developing its own system. When it launched, it did so with a massive advertising campaign. From Polaroid's perspective, this was a declaration of war. Polaroid was a company with all of its eggs in one basket. It had no choice but to fight to the death. And it did. It matched Kodak's every move, cutting prices and ramping up advertising. But more importantly, it took Kodak to court for patent infringement. The legal battle raged for years. In the end, Polaroid won. Kodak was forced to exit the business completely and pay Polaroid almost $1 billion in damages. It was one of the most catastrophic strategic blunders in corporate history. Kodak completely misread the competitive landscape. It failed to appreciate the strength of Polaroid's fortress and the ferocity with which it would be defended. The lesson from all these stories is beautifully simple. Strategy begins and ends with a clear-eyed assessment of the competitive landscape. It's about understanding barriers to entry. Are they there? Who do they protect? What is their source? If you have an advantage, your strategy is about deepening your moat and strengthening your walls. If you're attacking a fortress, you'd better have a very, very clever plan. And if you're on a level playing field, you must forget about grand strategic maneuvers and focus with every ounce of your energy on simply being the best, most efficient operator in the game. By stripping away the complexity, the authors give us a powerful lens. It's a way of looking at the world that, once you adopt it, clarifies everything. It demystifies the very nature of competition itself. Commentary. As we come to the end of our journey through Competition Demystified, it's worth taking a moment to let the sheer simplicity and power of its central idea sink in. In a world that constantly bombards us with complexity, with 5 forces, 7 S's, and endless matrices, Bruce Greenwald and Judd Kahn offer us a single foundational question: are there barriers to entry? That question is a clarifying force. It acts like a compass in the dense fog of business strategy, always pointing toward what truly matters. What's so profound about this approach is that it's not just a tool for CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. It's a mental model for life. As a young person thinking about your future, you can apply this lens to everything. When you're considering a career path, you can ask, is this a field with high barriers to entry? Does it require a unique skill, a specialized credential, or a deep network that not many people have? Or is it a level playing field where thousands of people with similar qualifications are competing for the same jobs, driving down salaries and security? Finding a niche, a place where you can build a defensible advantage, is the career equivalent of finding a market with barriers to entry. If you ever think about starting your own business, this book provides the ultimate reality check. It forces you to move beyond the excitement of a great idea or a cool product and ask the tough, essential questions. Is this a business where I can build a moat? Can I create customer captivity through habit or high switching costs? Can I achieve local economies of scale that protect me from bigger competitors? So many brilliant ideas have failed because they were launched into markets that were fundamentally unprotected. There are a few key lessons from this book that I hope you'll carry with you. First, think local. In our globalized world, this is a deeply counterintuitive idea, but it is the secret to so many great success stories. Don't try to conquer the world all at once. Find a small pond, a specific geographic area, a niche customer group, a specialized product, where you can be the big fish. Dominate that small space first. Build your fortress there. Then, and only then, think about expanding, cautiously, from the edges of your stronghold. Second, distinguish between a good product and a good business. This is the lesson of Apple versus Microsoft, of Cadillac versus Coca-Cola. You can have the most elegant, beloved product in the world, but if you're operating at a competitive disadvantage, you will struggle. A good business isn't just about what you make, it's about the structure of the market you operate in. And finally, don't confuse growth with success. The story of Coors is a powerful reminder that unfocused growth can destroy value. The goal isn't just to get bigger, it's to achieve profitable, defensible growth. Sometimes, the wisest strategic decision is to stay small, to protect your profitable niche rather than venturing out into the dangerous, open plains of a level playing field. The true gift of this book isn't a secret formula for success. It's clarity. It's a way of seeing the underlying structure of the world, of understanding the forces that shape victory and defeat in the competitive arena. Once you start asking the question, where are the barriers? You'll see it everywhere, in the businesses you frequent, the products you buy, and the career choices you consider. You'll have a lens that can help you navigate your own path with greater wisdom and intention. That was a summary of Competition Demystified by Bruce Greenwald and Judd Kahn. We've explored the core principles today, but I'll be honest with you, a summary is like looking at a map of a beautiful country. It can show you the major cities and the rivers, but it can never replace the experience of actually walking the streets and seeing the landscape for yourself. The real magic happens when you read the book. It's in the detailed case studies, the deep dives into the numbers, and the subtle insights that hit you in a way you didn't expect. This summary is designed to help you decide if this book is worth your time. If anything we've talked about today has resonated with you, I truly encourage you to grab a copy. Reading it isn't just learning, it's an experience that can fundamentally change the way you see the world of business and your place in it. A link to the book is in the description below. Also, if you found this journey valuable, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It lets us know we're on the right track and ensures you won't miss our next exploration of another life-changing book. Let's keep learning and growing together.